The story opens with former Marine Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez patrolling the heavily fortified walls of Haven City, humanity's last major stronghold. The towering concrete barriers, reinforced with razor wire and electrified fencing, have protected the remaining 50,000 survivors for 3 years since the zombie outbreak began. Marcus adjusts his tactical vest and checks his rifle as he scans the horizon through his binoculars, watching for any signs of movement in the wasteland beyond. The morning sun casts long shadows across the abandoned cityscape, where rusted vehicles and skeletal remains of buildings serve as grim reminders of civilization's fall. Dr. Emily Thompson, the settlement's chief scientist, rushes through the underground research facility beneath the city center. Her blonde hair is pulled back in a messy bun, and dark circles under her green eyes reveal countless sleepless nights spent working on a potential cure. She carries a tablet displaying disturbing data about viral mutations detected in recent zombie specimens. The latest samples show the undead are evolving, becoming faster and more intelligent with each passing month. Emily's research team has been tracking these changes, and the implications are terrifying. Meanwhile, in the command center, General William Hayes reviews intelligence reports with his top officers. The gruff, silver-haired veteran has led Haven City's defense since the beginning, making impossible decisions to keep humanity alive. Recent reconnaissance missions have revealed massive zombie hordes gathering in the surrounding territories, drawn by the electromagnetic signatures of the city's power grid. Hayes knows their defensive perimeter won't hold forever against such numbers. The tension escalates when patrol leader Jake Morrison returns from a scouting mission with devastating news. The charismatic former police officer leads a team of elite rangers who venture beyond the walls to gather intelligence and secure supplies. His latest report confirms their worst fears: a megahorde of over 100,000 zombies is slowly advancing toward Haven City, consuming everything in its path. Morrison's team barely escaped after witnessing the horde devour an entire survivor settlement just 50 miles away. As the leadership meets to discuss evacuation protocols, a piercing alarm shatters the morning calm. The outer sensor grid has detected a massive breach in the eastern wall. Marcus and his fellow guards rush to the compromised section, where they discover that a group of evolved zombies has somehow bypassed their security systems. These aren't ordinary undead, they move with calculated precision, using primitive tools to create openings in the fence. The infection has progressed far beyond what anyone anticipated. The first wave of zombies pours through the breach like water through a broken dam. Marcus opens fire with his assault rifle, his military training kicking in as he coordinates the defensive response. The creatures move with unnatural speed, their decaying bodies somehow more agile than before. Some leap incredible distances while others display pack-hunting behaviors, surrounding isolated defenders with tactical coordination that chills Marcus to the bone. Dr. Thompson receives an emergency alert on her tablet and realizes the breach couldn't have come at a worse time. Her latest experiments have shown promising results for a zombie cure, but the serum requires rare compounds that can only be found in the abandoned laboratories of the old world. Without these components, humanity will remain defenseless against the evolving threat. She makes a desperate decision to join the evacuation teams, knowing that her research might be the only hope for the species. General Hayes faces an impossible choice as reports flood in from all sectors. The breach is expanding rapidly, and conventional weapons are proving less effective against the evolved zombies. Their ammunition supplies are running dangerously low, and the city's power grid is struggling to maintain the electromagnetic barriers that have kept the main horde at bay. Hayes realizes that Haven City's days are numbered, and he must choose between a last stand or a dangerous exodus into the infected wasteland. The evacuation sirens wail across the city as families gather their few precious possessions and head for the emergency exits. Children cry as parents try to remain calm, knowing that leaving Haven City means facing the horrors of the outside world. Marcus leads a group of civilians through the underground tunnels while fighting off zombies that have infiltrated the lower levels. The tunnel system, once considered their ultimate failsafe, has become a maze of terror. As the first part concludes, Dr. Thompson makes a shocking discovery in her laboratory. The zombie virus isn't just evolving randomly, it's being directed by some form of collective intelligence. The creatures are learning, adapting, and coordinating their attacks with a purpose that suggests something far more sinister than a simple viral outbreak. She realizes that humanity isn't just fighting for survival against mindless monsters, they're engaged in a war against an enemy that's becoming smarter with each passing day. The stakes have never been higher, and the battle for humanity's future is about to begin. The underground tunnels of Haven City had become a hellscape of terror as Marcus Rodriguez led a group of 30 civilians through the maintenance corridors beneath the crumbling city. The fluorescent lights flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows on the concrete walls while the distant sounds of screaming and gunfire echoed from above. Marcus pressed his back against the cold tunnel wall, raising his fist to signal the group to halt as he listened for movement ahead. His tactical headset crackled with reports from other evacuation teams scattered throughout the tunnel system, each one painting a grimmer picture of their situation. The evolved zombies had somehow found their way into the underground network, turning their planned escape route into a deadly maze. Dr. Emily Thompson clutched her emergency research kit tightly as she followed Marcus through the tunnels, her mind racing with the implications of her latest discovery. The zombie virus wasn't just evolving randomly, it was being guided by some form of collective intelligence that allowed the creatures to coordinate their attacks with frightening precision. She had managed to download critical data from her laboratory computer before the facility was overrun, but the portable drive in her pocket contained humanity's only hope for understanding and potentially stopping the outbreak. Behind her, families with young children struggled to keep pace while elderly survivors leaned heavily on makeshift crutches, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. The group's progress was interrupted by a bone-chilling growl emanating from a side passage ahead. Marcus immediately raised his rifle, motioning for the civilians to move back as 3 evolved zombies emerged from the darkness. These creatures moved with disturbing coordination, their decaying bodies somehow more agile and purposeful than the mindless hordes they had fought before. The first zombie lunged forward with inhuman speed, its claws extended toward a terrified mother holding her infant daughter. Marcus fired a precise burst that sent the creature spinning backward, but not before it let out a haunting shriek that seemed to communicate with its companions. Meanwhile, in the command center 3 levels above, General William Hayes watched his tactical display with growing dread as evacuation teams reported contact with hostiles throughout the tunnel system. The city's main power grid was failing, and the electromagnetic barriers that had kept the megahorde at bay were beginning to fluctuate. Hayes knew they had perhaps 2 hours before the main force of 100,000 zombies reached the city center, and less than half of the civilian population had successfully evacuated. He made the devastating decision to seal certain tunnel sections to prevent the undead from flanking the evacuation routes, knowing that some survivor groups would be trapped on the wrong side of the emergency barriers. Back in the tunnels, Marcus and his group encountered Jake Morrison's ranger team, who had been fighting a running battle against evolved zombies for the past hour. Morrison's tactical vest was torn and bloodied, and his usually confident demeanor had been replaced by grim determination. He reported that the creatures were displaying pack-hunting behaviors, using flanking maneuvers and coordinated attacks that suggested a level of intelligence far beyond what they had previously encountered. The Rangers had lost 2 team members in the previous engagement, and their ammunition was running dangerously low. Dr. Thompson made a crucial observation as they moved deeper into the tunnel system. The evolved zombies weren't just randomly attacking, they were specifically targeting key personnel and attempting to destroy critical infrastructure. She realized that the collective intelligence guiding the outbreak was actively trying to prevent humanity from escaping or developing countermeasures. The creatures had somehow identified her as a threat and were directing their attacks toward her research team. This revelation sent chills down her spine as she understood that humanity was fighting an enemy that could think, plan, and adapt in real time. The evacuation took a desperate turn when the tunnel lights suddenly went out, plunging the survivors into complete darkness. Emergency lighting systems flickered on moments later, but the brief blackout had allowed a group of evolved zombies to close the distance significantly. Marcus ordered the civilians to form a tight defensive circle while he and Morrison's Rangers established a perimeter. The creatures moved through the shadows with predatory grace, their eyes reflecting the dim emergency lights as they prepared for a coordinated assault. The sound of their collective breathing created an ominous chorus that seemed to come from every direction at once. As the second part reaches its climax, Dr. Thompson makes a startling discovery about the emergency communication system. The evolved zombies have been intercepting and somehow understanding human radio transmissions, using the information to anticipate evacuation routes and coordinate their attacks. She realizes that the collective intelligence isn't just controlling the zombies, it's learning from human behavior and adapting its strategies accordingly. The survivors must now find a way to reach the surface without using any electronic communication, making their escape exponentially more dangerous as they face an enemy that seems to anticipate their every move. The battle for survival has become a deadly game of chess, with humanity struggling to stay one step ahead of an opponent that grows smarter with each passing moment. The emergency exit doors burst open as Marcus Rodriguez led the surviving group of refugees into the harsh daylight of the wasteland, their eyes struggling to adjust after hours in the dimly lit tunnels. The landscape before them was a nightmarish vision of humanity's collapse. Twisted metal structures jutted from the ground like broken bones, while the skeletal remains of skyscrapers stretched toward a sky darkened by perpetual smoke clouds. The air carried the stench of decay and burning debris, forcing the survivors to cover their faces with makeshift masks as they took their first steps into the world beyond Haven City's protective walls. Behind them, the sounds of explosions and collapsing infrastructure marked the final death throes of their former sanctuary. Dr. Emily Thompson clutched her research kit while scanning the horizon with growing dread, knowing that somewhere in this desolate expanse, the massive zombie horde was still advancing toward their position. The portable radiation detector in her kit clicked steadily, indicating that the fallout from the military's desperate nuclear containment attempts 3 years ago still contaminated large areas of the wasteland. She had studied the maps extensively during their time in Haven City, memorizing the locations of abandoned research facilities and military installations that might contain the resources needed to complete her cure. However, reaching these locations would require crossing territories that had been completely overrun by the undead. Jake Morrison's ranger team spread out in a defensive formation, their weapons ready as they scouted the immediate area for threats. The former police officer had lost 2 of his best men during the tunnel evacuation, and the weight of leadership pressed heavily on his shoulders as he guided the group through the treacherous terrain. His tactical experience told him that they were completely exposed in the open wasteland, vulnerable to attacks from evolved zombies that could approach from any direction. Morrison signaled for the group to take cover behind a collapsed overpass while he used his binoculars to survey the path ahead, searching for signs of movement among the abandoned vehicles and debris. The group's first encounter with the wasteland's horrors came when they discovered the remains of Sanctuary Ridge, a smaller survivor settlement that had fallen to the mega-horde just days earlier. The scene was devastating. Hastily constructed barriers had been torn apart like paper, and the ground was littered with personal belongings and makeshift weapons that had proven useless against the evolved zombies. Marcus led a small team to investigate the settlement's radio tower, hoping to establish communication with other survivor groups, but they found only silence on all frequencies. The tower's communication equipment had been deliberately destroyed, suggesting that the zombies were systematically eliminating humanity's ability to coordinate their survival efforts. As the survivors moved deeper into the wasteland, they encountered evidence of the zombie evolution that Dr. Thompson had warned them about. Fresh tracks in the hardened earth showed that some creatures had developed longer limbs and more pronounced claws, while others had grown additional appendages that allowed them to climb vertical surfaces with ease. Thompson collected samples of the strange, dark substance that seemed to seep from these tracks, noting that it had an almost metallic quality that suggested the virus was incorporating environmental toxins into its mutation process. The implications were terrifying. The zombies weren't just evolving, they were adapting to thrive in the hostile conditions of the post-apocalyptic world. The group's supplies were running dangerously low when they encountered a lone survivor named David Chen, a former military engineer who had been living in a fortified bunker system for the past 6 months. Chen warned them that the megahorde had changed direction during the night, moving with a purpose that suggested they were being guided toward a specific target. He had witnessed the creatures displaying new behaviors. Some had begun constructing primitive tools and weapons, while others seemed to be communicating through complex series of clicks and growls that resembled a rudimentary language. Chen's bunker contained detailed maps of the surrounding area and intelligence about other survivor settlements, but he also brought disturbing news about the zombie horde's new abilities. The third part reaches its climax when the group discovers a horrifying truth about the wasteland itself. The evolved zombies have been terraforming the landscape, creating nest-like structures from debris and organic matter that serve as breeding grounds for new mutations. Dr. Thompson realizes that the collective intelligence controlling the outbreak isn't just trying to eliminate humanity, it's actively reshaping the world to create an environment where the evolved zombies can thrive. The virus has moved beyond simple infection and reanimation, it's become a force of planetary transformation. As night falls over the wasteland, the survivors can see bioluminescent patterns spreading across the landscape like a vast neural network, connecting the zombie nests in a web of alien intelligence. They understand now that they're not just fighting for survival, they're battling for the very future of Earth itself, and time is running out faster than they ever imagined. The abandoned military research facility loomed before them like a fortress of steel and concrete, its imposing structure somehow still intact despite 3 years of neglect and zombie attacks. Dr. Emily Thompson felt her heart race as she recognized the distinctive architecture of a Level 4 biosafety laboratory, the kind of facility that would have been working on classified biological weapons research before the outbreak began. Marcus Rodriguez positioned his rifle as he surveyed the facility's perimeter through his scope, noting that the electrified fencing was still operational thanks to a geothermal power system that had continued running autonomously. The building's windows were reinforced with blast-resistant materials, and multiple layers of security barriers suggested that whatever had been researched here was considered extremely dangerous even by military standards. Jake Morrison's ranger team had spent the entire morning fighting their way through a gauntlet of evolved zombies that seemed to be guarding the facility's approaches. These creatures displayed a level of tactical awareness that unnerved even the experienced combat veterans, using coordinated flanking maneuvers and strategic positioning that suggested they understood the importance of protecting this location. Morrison himself had barely escaped when a group of zombies attempted to cut off his retreat route, their movements so precisely coordinated that it seemed like they were receiving orders from an unseen commander. The ranger leader's tactical vest was shredded from claw marks, and his left arm bore fresh bandages from wounds that had required immediate field treatment. Dr. Thompson's hands trembled with anticipation as she accessed the facility's security system using her emergency research credentials, hoping that her clearance level would still be recognized by the automated systems. The heavy blast doors slowly ground open with a mechanical whine that echoed across the wasteland, revealing a pristine interior that stood in stark contrast to the devastation outside. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow throughout the corridors, and the facility's air filtration system hummed quietly, having maintained sterile conditions even during the years of abandonment. Thompson realized that this facility had been designed to operate independently for extended periods, suggesting that the military had anticipated the possibility of a catastrophic biological event. As the team ventured deeper into the facility, they discovered laboratories filled with sophisticated equipment and research data that made Thompson's heart skip with excitement. The computers contained detailed genetic analysis of the zombie virus, including experimental treatments and theoretical cures that were far more advanced than anything she had been able to develop in Haven City. However, the research files also revealed a disturbing truth about the outbreak's origins. The zombie virus hadn't been a natural occurrence or accidental release, it had been deliberately engineered as a biological weapon, designed to create a controllable army of undead soldiers. The project had been codenamed Lazarus Protocol, and the files indicated that the virus had been tested on unwilling subjects in remote locations around the world. Marcus discovered a secure armory that contained advanced military weapons and ammunition specifically designed for combating biological threats. The weapons included experimental energy-based systems that could disrupt the electrical impulses that animated zombie tissue, potentially offering a more effective means of eliminating the creatures than conventional firearms. However, the armory also contained disturbing evidence of the facility's true purpose. Video logs showed military personnel conducting horrific experiments on living subjects, deliberately infecting them with various strains of the virus to observe the mutation process and develop methods for controlling the resulting zombies. The most shocking discovery came when Dr. Thompson accessed the facility's main research terminal and found files detailing the virus's adaptive capabilities. The Lazarus Protocol had been designed with built-in evolution mechanisms that allowed the virus to modify itself based on environmental conditions and strategic needs. The collective intelligence that Thompson had observed wasn't an unexpected side effect of the outbreak, it was a deliberate feature that had been programmed into the virus from the beginning. The military had created a biological weapon that could think, learn, and adapt, but they had lost control of it when the virus evolved beyond their programming parameters. As the team explored deeper into the facility, they triggered a security protocol that activated dormant defense systems throughout the building. Blast doors sealed automatically, trapping them inside while robotic sentries emerged from hidden compartments to eliminate any unauthorized personnel. The facility's artificial intelligence had been programmed to prevent the research data from falling into the wrong hands, and it now considered the survivors to be potential threats to national security. Marcus and his team found themselves fighting a two-front war against both the facility's automated defenses and the evolved zombies that had begun infiltrating the building through ventilation systems and maintenance tunnels. Dr. Thompson realized that they had walked into a trap, but she also understood that the research data contained in this facility might be humanity's only hope for stopping the Lazarus Protocol before it completed its transformation of the entire planet into a zombie-controlled ecosystem. The facility's emergency lighting cast ominous shadows across the research laboratory as Dr. Emily Thompson worked frantically to download the Lazarus Protocol data while Marcus Rodriguez and his team held defensive positions against the automated security systems. The robotic sentries moved with mechanical precision, their weapons systems targeting anyone who approached the central research terminals, but Marcus had managed to disable two of them using electromagnetic pulse grenades from the facility's own armory. The sound of metal grinding against concrete echoed through the corridors as more security drones activated, their red scanning beams sweeping the area in search of intruders. Thompson's fingers flew across the keyboard, her years of scientific training allowing her to navigate the complex file systems even under the extreme pressure of combat. Jake Morrison's Ranger team had established a perimeter around the laboratory entrance, fighting off waves of evolved zombies that seemed to pour endlessly through the facility's ventilation systems. The creatures had somehow learned to navigate the building's layout with disturbing efficiency, suggesting that the collective intelligence was analyzing the facility's blueprints in real time and directing the zombies through optimal attack routes. Morrison himself was bleeding from multiple wounds, his tactical vest torn and his ammunition running dangerously low as he coordinated his team's defensive efforts. The Ranger leader had begun to suspect that someone was providing the zombies with inside information about their positions and tactics, but he couldn't identify the source of the leak. The first sign of betrayal came when David Chen, the military engineer they had rescued from the wasteland bunker, began acting strangely during the firefight. While the others focused on defending the laboratory, Chen had been quietly accessing secondary computer terminals and downloading files that weren't related to the cure research. Marcus noticed that Chen seemed unusually familiar with the facility's layout, navigating the corridors with the confidence of someone who had been there before. When confronted about his knowledge of the building, Chen claimed he had studied the architectural plans during his military service, but his explanations became increasingly evasive as the questions grew more specific. Dr. Thompson made a horrifying discovery when she accessed the personnel files for the Lazarus Protocol project. David Chen's photograph appeared among the research team members, listed as a senior bioweapons engineer who had been involved in the virus's initial development. The files revealed that Chen had been one of the scientists responsible for programming the collective intelligence feature into the zombie virus, and that he had disappeared from the facility just days before the outbreak began. Thompson realized that Chen's survival in the wasteland hadn't been due to luck or military training. He had been protected by the very creatures he had helped create because he was still valuable to the collective intelligence. The betrayal reached its climax when Chen revealed his true allegiance during a critical moment in the battle. As Marcus and his team fought desperately to hold back a massive wave of evolved zombies, Chen deliberately sabotaged the facility's defense systems, opening blast doors and disabling security barriers that had been protecting the survivors. he announced that humanity's time was over and that the future belonged to a hybrid species that combined human intelligence with zombie resilience. Chen had been working with the collective intelligence to guide the zombie evolution process, believing that cooperation with the undead was the only path to survival. He claimed that the Lazarus Protocol represented the next stage of human evolution, and that those who refused to accept the transformation would be eliminated. Marcus felt a surge of rage and betrayal as he realized that Chen had been manipulating them from the moment they found him in the wasteland. The engineer had used his knowledge of survivor psychology to gain their trust while secretly reporting their movements and plans to the zombie collective. Every ambush they had survived, every narrow escape they had made, had been orchestrated by Chen to guide them toward this facility where the collective intelligence could access the original research data and complete its transformation protocols. The survivors had been unwitting pawns in a larger game, and their mission to find a cure had actually been serving the enemy's purposes. The laboratory erupted into chaos as Chen's betrayal triggered a coordinated zombie assault from multiple directions. The evolved creatures poured through the open blast doors with unprecedented organization, their movements perfectly synchronized as they surrounded the surviving humans. Dr. Thompson clutched the partially downloaded research data to her chest, knowing that it contained both the key to stopping the zombie evolution and the information needed to complete it. Jake Morrison's Rangers formed a desperate defensive circle around Thompson and Marcus, their weapons blazing as they fought against impossible odds. Chen stood among the zombies without fear, his eyes gleaming with fanatical conviction as he watched his former comrades fight for their lives. The battle for humanity's future had become a three-way conflict between the survivors, the zombie collective, and the human collaborators who believed that evolution required the extinction of their own species. Dr. Emily Thompson's hands shook as she held the completed prototype cure in a reinforced containment vial, the luminescent blue serum representing months of desperate research condensed into a single moment of scientific breakthrough. The laboratory around her was a battlefield of overturned equipment and bullet-scarred walls, evidence of the brutal fighting that had raged for hours as Marcus Rodriguez and his team fought to protect her while she worked. The cure had required combining the original Lazarus Protocol data with genetic samples from evolved zombies, creating a compound that could theoretically reverse the viral transformation at a cellular level. However, the serum remained untested, and Thompson knew that a single mistake could doom humanity's last hope for survival. Marcus coordinated his remaining fighters from behind a barricade of laboratory furniture, his rifle trained on the sealed blast doors where David Chen and his zombie allies had retreated after their initial assault failed. The former Marine's tactical experience told him that Chen was planning something more devastating than a direct attack, likely using his knowledge of the facility's systems to trap them inside while the megahorde completed its approach to their position. Marcus had lost 3 more team members during the previous firefight, and ammunition was running critically low among the survivors. The sound of metal grinding against metal echoed through the corridors as the evolved zombies tested the facility's remaining defenses, their collective intelligence probing for weaknesses in the survivors' position. Jake Morrison's Ranger team had successfully captured 2 evolved zombies during a desperate raid into the facility's lower levels, dragging the struggling creatures back to the laboratory where Dr. Thompson could conduct live testing of the prototype cure. The zombies were unlike anything they had encountered before. Their bodies showed signs of advanced mutation that included bioluminescent neural pathways visible beneath their translucent skin, and their eyes displayed an unsettling intelligence that seemed to track every movement in the room. Morrison himself had been infected during the capture mission, zombie claws having torn through his protective gear and left deep wounds that were already showing signs of viral contamination. The Ranger leader knew he had perhaps hours before the infection took hold, making him a willing volunteer for the cure's first human trial. The testing process revealed both the cure's potential and its limitations as Dr. Thompson carefully administered the serum to the captured zombies under controlled conditions. The first creature experienced violent convulsions as the cure began attacking the viral structure in its cells, its bioluminescent pathways flickering erratically before gradually fading to normal human coloration. For a brief moment, the zombie's eyes cleared and it seemed to regain human consciousness, looking around the laboratory with confusion and terror before collapsing into unconsciousness. However, the second zombie showed no response to the treatment, its advanced mutations having progressed beyond the cure's ability to reverse the viral transformation. Thompson realized that the cure would only be effective on recently infected individuals or those in the early stages of evolution. The most shocking discovery came when Thompson analyzed the blood samples from the responsive zombie and found traces of human DNA that had been preserved within the viral matrix. The Lazarus Protocol hadn't simply reanimated dead tissue, it had been designed to maintain core human genetic information while adding zombie characteristics, creating the possibility of reversing the transformation under the right conditions. This revelation meant that many of the zombies they had been fighting retained fragments of their original human personalities buried beneath the viral control system. The collective intelligence had been using these preserved human memories and experiences to make the zombies more effective at hunting and adapting to human tactics. Jake Morrison volunteered to be the first human test subject for the cure, his infection having progressed to the point where dark veins were visible beneath his skin and his eyes had begun to take on the characteristic glow of zombie transformation. Dr. Thompson administered the serum with careful precision, monitoring Morrison's vital signs as the cure began its work against the advancing viral infection. The treatment was agonizing. Morrison's body convulsed as the cure fought to destroy the viral cells while preserving his human tissue, his screams echoing through the laboratory as the other survivors watched in tense silence. After several minutes of intense struggle, Morrison's vital signs stabilized and the visible signs of infection began to recede, proving that the cure could work on humans if administered before the transformation became irreversible. The success of Morrison's treatment was interrupted when the facility's main power grid suddenly failed, plunging the laboratory into darkness as Chen's sabotage efforts reached their culmination. Emergency backup systems flickered to life moments later, but the brief blackout had allowed evolved zombies to breach the laboratory's final defenses through maintenance shafts and ventilation systems. Dr. Thompson clutched the remaining cure samples as chaos erupted around her, knowing that she now possessed the weapon needed to stop the zombie apocalypse but lacking the means to deploy it on the massive scale required to neutralize the approaching megahorde. The cure worked, but time was running out, and the collective intelligence had realized the threat to its existence and was mobilizing every available zombie to prevent the cure from leaving the facility. The abandoned radio transmission tower on Mount Harrison provided the perfect strategic position for humanity's last desperate gambit, its elevated location offering both defensive advantages and the infrastructure needed to deploy Dr. Emily Thompson's cure on a massive scale. Marcus Rodriguez surveyed the approaching megahorde through his binoculars, watching in grim fascination as over 100,000 evolved zombies moved across the valley floor with the coordinated precision of a military formation. The creatures had organized themselves into distinct tactical units, with faster scouts flanking the main force while larger, more heavily mutated specimens formed the core assault group. The bioluminescent neural network that connected them pulsed with alien intelligence, creating patterns of light that rippled through their ranks like thoughts made visible. General William Hayes had arrived at the transmission site with the remnants of Haven City's military forces, bringing heavy weapons, ammunition, and a team of engineers who had been working frantically to modify the radio tower's broadcast equipment for Dr. Thompson's cure deployment system. The gruff veteran commander carried himself with the bearing of a man who knew this would be his final battle, his weathered face etched with determination as he coordinated defensive positions around the tower's base. Hayes had lost everything during the evacuation of Haven City, watching his life's work crumble as the zombie collective systematically destroyed humanity's last major stronghold. This tower represented not just a tactical position but a chance for redemption and revenge against the forces that had brought civilization to its knees. Dr. Thompson worked with desperate efficiency in the tower's equipment room, connecting her cure synthesis apparatus to the transmission array's power systems while Jake Morrison's recovered ranger team established perimeter defenses around the critical installation. The cure deployment system was a marvel of improvised engineering, designed to vaporize the serum and broadcast it through the radio waves that would carry the treatment directly into the zombies' nervous systems. Thompson's calculations indicated that a successful transmission would theoretically cure every zombie within a 50-mile radius, but the system required enormous amounts of power and would need several minutes of uninterrupted operation to achieve full effectiveness. The margin for error was virtually non-existent, and any disruption to the process would render the cure deployment completely useless. The battle began at dawn as the zombie vanguard reached the base of Mount Harrison, their evolved forms moving with inhuman agility as they scaled the rocky slopes with claws that had adapted specifically for climbing vertical surfaces. Marcus led the first line of defense, his team positioned behind hastily constructed barriers of concrete and steel that had been salvaged from the abandoned town below. The evolved zombies attacked in waves, each assault more coordinated than the last as the collective intelligence analyzed the defenders' tactics and adapted its strategy accordingly. The creatures displayed terrifying new abilities during the assault, with some zombies launching acidic projectiles from specialized glands while others used their bioluminescent networks to blind and disorient the human defenders. General Hayes commanded the heavy weapons teams from a fortified position halfway up the mountain, his artillery units laying down devastating barrages against the zombie formations as they advanced up the slopes. The modified military equipment included experimental energy weapons that had been salvaged from the research facility, their electromagnetic pulses capable of disrupting the neural networks that controlled zombie behavior. However, the collective intelligence quickly adapted to these weapons, directing its forces to attack from multiple angles simultaneously and overwhelming the defenders' ability to coordinate their fire. Hayes realized that conventional military tactics were inadequate against an enemy that could think faster than human commanders and adapt to countermeasures in real time. The tide of battle turned against the defenders when David Chen appeared among the zombie ranks, his body showing signs of voluntary viral integration that had enhanced his physical capabilities while preserving his human intelligence. Chen directed the evolved zombies with tactical precision that combined human strategic thinking with the collective's superhuman coordination abilities, turning the assault into a masterpiece of combined arms warfare. The traitor had become something beyond human or zombie, representing the evolutionary fusion that the Lazarus Protocol had always been designed to achieve. His presence on the battlefield demonstrated that the collective intelligence could incorporate willing human collaborators without destroying their individual consciousness, creating hybrid leaders who understood both species' strengths and weaknesses. As the final assault reached the transmission tower itself, Dr. Thompson activated the Cure deployment system while Marcus and his remaining fighters formed a last defensive circle around the critical equipment. The tower's massive transmitter began broadcasting the Cure-infused radio waves across the battlefield, and the effect was immediate and dramatic. Zombies closest to the tower began convulsing as the Cure attacked their viral systems, their bioluminescent networks flickering and failing as human consciousness began reasserting itself over the collective intelligence. However, the system required 3 more minutes to achieve full power, and the evolved zombies were throwing everything they had at the tower in a desperate attempt to stop the transmission. The fate of humanity hung in the balance as the survivors fought their most desperate battle against an enemy that would rather destroy the world than lose control of it. The Cure transmission reached full power as Dr. Emily Thompson's modified radio array sent healing waves cascading across the battlefield, and the effect was nothing short of miraculous as thousands of evolved zombies suddenly collapsed to their knees, their bioluminescent neural networks flickering out like dying stars. Marcus Rodriguez watched in amazement as the creatures' grotesque mutations began reversing themselves, their elongated claws retracting and their translucent skin returning to normal human coloration. The collective intelligence that had controlled the Megahorde for so long let out a final, agonized shriek that resonated through every zombie simultaneously before falling silent forever, leaving behind confused and terrified humans who had been trapped within their own bodies for years. However, not all of the zombies were affected by the Cure. Those with the most advanced mutations remained unchanged, their evolution having progressed beyond the point where the serum could reverse the viral transformation. General William Hayes led the cleanup operations in the aftermath of the Cure deployment, his military forces working to secure the newly cured survivors while eliminating the remaining advanced zombies that posed a continued threat to human safety. The veteran commander found himself overwhelmed by the logistics of processing thousands of confused and traumatized individuals who had no memory of their time under the collective's control, many of whom had been infected for years and had no idea that civilization had collapsed around them. Hayes established temporary refugee camps in the valley below Mount Harrison, using military medical teams to provide psychological counseling and physical rehabilitation for the Cure recipients. The general knew that rebuilding society would be an enormous challenge, but for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel hope for humanity's future. Dr. Thompson continued her research in a makeshift laboratory established near the transmission tower, working to refine the cure formula and develop treatments for the zombies who had proven resistant to the initial deployment. Her analysis of the surviving specimens revealed that approximately 10% of the evolved zombies retained their mutations, suggesting that the Lazarus Protocol had created permanent genetic changes in some individuals that could not be reversed through conventional means. Thompson realized that these remaining zombies would need to be contained or eliminated, as their intelligence and adaptive capabilities made them extremely dangerous to the rebuilding human settlements. However, she also discovered that some of the cured individuals retained enhanced physical abilities and improved resistance to disease, indicating that controlled exposure to modified versions of the virus might actually benefit human evolution. Marcus Rodriguez took on the role of security coordinator for the growing survivor community, establishing patrol routes and defensive protocols to protect the settlement from both remaining zombie threats and potential human raiders who might target their resources. The former Marine had lost many friends during the long fight for survival, but he found purpose in training the newly cured survivors to defend themselves and their community. Marcus worked closely with Jake Morrison, whose successful cure treatment had left him with enhanced reflexes and strength that proved invaluable for reconnaissance missions into the still dangerous wasteland. Together, they developed new tactics for dealing with the remaining evolved zombies while exploring the abandoned cities to salvage technology and supplies needed for rebuilding civilization. The most challenging aspect of the new world came from David Chen and the remaining human zombie hybrids who had retreated into the deep wasteland after the cure deployment failed to affect them. Chen had become the leader of a new faction that represented the evolutionary path the Lazarus Protocol had originally intended, combining human intelligence with zombie resilience to create beings that were superior to both species. These hybrids established their own settlements in areas too dangerous for normal humans to inhabit, using their enhanced abilities to thrive in the radioactive zones and toxic environments that had been created during the outbreak. Chen periodically sent diplomatic messages to the human settlements, offering technological assistance and proposing coexistence between the two species, but many survivors viewed the hybrids as an existential threat to pure humanity. 1 year after the cure deployment, the survivors had established New Haven, a thriving settlement of over 10,000 people that served as the foundation for humanity's return to civilization. Dr. Thompson had been elected as the settlement's scientific advisor, continuing her research while also serving as an advocate for peaceful coexistence with the remaining zombie variants and human hybrids. Marcus Rodriguez commanded the settlement's security forces, which had evolved into a professional military organization capable of defending against both zombie incursions and human threats. General Hayes had retired from active duty but remained as a strategic advisor, sharing his experience while mentoring the next generation of leaders. The world had been forever changed by the zombie apocalypse, but humanity had not only survived but learned to adapt and evolve. The new dawn brought challenges and uncertainties, but it also offered hope for a future where humans, cured zombies, and hybrids might coexist in a world transformed by the lessons learned during humanity's darkest hour.